Du, 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 bu, bu. Guten Morgen, ihr Lieben. Wie geht es euch heute? Okay, starting out classically. And moving into the Scotch. They seem to know their theory. They may be pretty well prepared for this match because, opponents have been known. Because opponents have been known for probably a week to 10 days, something like that. So, maybe one of them saw Castle looking at the line yesterday. Maybe. All right, first think of the game. 30 seconds from white before taking on d6 there. I don't know if white had any other good choice here. I think pawn takes is not very attractive. I think retreating is not very attractive in face of knight c4. So I think this pretty much had to be played. And here we go. Black's got a slight structural disadvantage here. Just based on the pawns here being split. I think a main plan for black might be to quickly play d5 and get a pass pawn in the center to make up for the split pawns, at least turn one of them into a nice passer. But the move bishop f4 looks kind of nice for white because this square is hard to defend, right? Like black plays d5, but white maybe trades once, plays knight d6. Takes. And if I visualize that position, black can't castle kingside, play something like bishop f5. Bishop b5 check is annoying, good move. Bishop back to d7, bishop back to d3. Yeah, it looks like white could get a nice advantage there just off of the bishop pair. And, yeah. Tal's tactician does indeed go for bishop f4. When is your match, Fisher Seb? Oh, maybe Rosenberg will take with the knight here. Then on knight d6 check, just move the king towards the knight with this bishop still hanging. Oh. You can always just not play it if you guys aren't interested. I'll just forfeit you and, move the other winners forward. That'll work too. Oh, Rosen's thinking about it. I'm going to quickly put on the board the variation I mentioned before. These moves aren't being played. This cuts off black from the one direction they really want to castle. And this move looks good for black for a moment. Because if white castles queenside, then rook c8 is really strong. But this bishop check move is good enough for white, right? Bishop here, bishop here. And white's just cruising. The bishop pair just looks great to me. I guess the one thought is maybe black could just play knight c4 immediately here. Hit the bishop and the pawn. And maybe white would have to trade this for like development's sake, right? Like takes, here and bring out the rooks quickly. And maybe black can, hang in there in an opposite colored bishop position, something like just castling here. And maybe it's close to equal. Maybe it's okay for black. So that might be like a key move for black to try and hang in this opening. But we see that Evan's having a long think about this. Oh, and he comes up with yet another move, d5, before taking back. Interesting, omoshiroi. Yeah, that definitely brings up decisions for white. That also makes knight d6 check a lot weaker, because in a lot of cases you could now play a move like king e7 and you don't trap in your own bishop, and the knight's hanging it, has to trade, and then you just bring out all your rooks. It's a much better version of losing a bishop pair to have white go knight c8 while black brings out the rooks. So, and especially if white has to play a move like king d1 here, right? Then this whole knight d6 is not looking nearly as strong, right? We do something like this. I mean, white still has a bishop pair, but the development advantage is not there at all. Black's rooks are coming out smoothly. And probably, again, knight c4 is the key move for counterplay. Interesting. Good question, Ken. If you get this isolated but passed pawn, is it good because it's a passed pawn, bad because it's isolated? How do you evaluate it? Very, very important question. So there's a mix of elements to it. Okay, one simple element to it, Ken, that you can bear in mind is that the further advanced it is, then like the space you gain from an isolated queen pawn in particular can start to compensate for it being isolated. So a lot of IQP positions, if the pawn is on d5 instead of d4 from white's perspective, then the space it gives you is like really nice. So that can already be something. The same is going to hold true even if it's an isolated pawn, right? Like if we go here, 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 here. These are not reasonable moves, but just for argument's sake, if we get something like this and the pawn is here, as that pawn becomes advanced, it's somewhat more and more likely that the space it's affording the black pieces is compensating for the pawn being isolated. Now, whether or not the factor of it being a passed pawn is compensating for it being isolated depends on whether or not it is at all threatening to queen, right? I mean, the only reason it's good to be a passed pawn is because you can queen. Otherwise, or, by threatening to queen, make your opponent sack a piece for it or something, right? So, I mean, that's why a passed pawn would be good. It's like saying, like, why would a bishop be good if you didn't have any open diagonals? It wouldn't be. Like, by definition, a bishop would be good with open diagonals. So for the fact that it's a passed pawn to matter, in your calculation has to be whether it seems like there are any threats or chances of it queening, whether the opponent's forced to use defensive resources to prevent it queening. So if you're looking at a pawn and you're looking at a game and you're calculating variations for white and black and whatever, bishop d2 played, by the way, folks, and in none of your variations does queening come up as an idea, then the fact that it's a passed pawn is probably not really affecting the evaluation in any significant way just yet. And when you start, thinking about, even if you think about a chance of queening it and you're like, well, that variation doesn't work, or there's a defense to it, or that's, just sort of hypothetical if they did all these trades, which they might not do. But as soon as that starts creeping in, the value of it as a passed pawn starts to creep in as well. And that's where you start saying, okay, maybe that's making up for it being isolated. So we get a retreat from white, and that was after bishop f4. I said d5 is part of black's plan. And white's essentially just played bishop f4 to d2 while black brought out a new piece. So I agree with Fisher Seb. White's opening has failed to punch. Right? They didn't get anything out of this. The simplest for black is just going to be to trade on d2, which either retreats white's knight or brings their king out, neither of which is really super for white. And then take and make the passed pawn versus taking with the knight and just leaving weird, sort of slightly bad split isolated pawns. So black is going to have comfortable equality after trading on d2 and playing c takes d5, is my take on this. And to get an advantage with white, every move has to kind of be punchy, pushing, threatening, trying to get slightly worse moves out of the opponent. You do one thing in the opening, like bishop f4 to d2, while your opponent's playing smoothly moves that they want to play, and it's equalized. That's kind of the deal. Here comes the king. White should still take, and if white's plan is knight d6 and knight c8, white's going to be sorely disappointed. That is helping develop the black rooks. That is not good. What? What's going on? Why wouldn't you have taken with the pawn? I mean, he is focused on chess while I'm focused on cereal, but still. What reason would there be for not doing this? I'm going to say there's no way he disagrees with me about pawn structure. There's no way he's got an alternate evaluation system where he's like, oh yeah, backward weak pawns on c6 are better than pawns on d5. There's no way. It's already isolated anyway, so there's got to be some kind of tactical move that he's not thrilled about. But I don't know. Here. Looks eminently like black just doesn't care, right? And their rooks can come out. What? Okay. So anyway, in this position he took with the knight, but what could he have cared about with cd5? I also think knight d6 is risking being actually bad. Like, not just like, is it okay or something, but like bad. Because this comes here. Knight c4 coming. Bishop a6. Knight c4. Takes. Outside pass pawns are not the biggest deal in rook endgames. There's still kings on the board. Every endgame's a king ending, so they can still matter. But this position, black's strength in the center is probably pretty nice with the king and pawn as like a strong centralized unit. I would prefer black in this position, just a tiny mild bit. So in terms of your question about evaluating, are these passed pawns or isolated pawns, you can file that away. David would give black a 0.2 of a pawn edge here. King endings, yeah, I can. we call endgames like bishop endings, knight endings, rook endings, etc., right? But technically all endings are also king endings, as well as being pawn endings or knight endings or rook endings, because there's always kings on the board. So there's always one piece that cares about outside passed pawns, is my point. Like if you've got a knight ending and only kings and knights, then an outside passed pawn's a super big deal, because the only pieces you have left to deal with it are knight and king, both of which hate doing that. Now in a rook ending, an outside pass pawn doesn't matter as much because rooks don't care about outside pass pawns, right? They operate on this kind of like infinite move. So it doesn't matter to them if a pass pawn is an A pawn or a B pawn, right? And actually in rook endings, a B pawn is better than an A pawn because there's more room for the attacking king to maneuver around it. And it doesn't matter as much to try and be far away from the center of the board because your opponent's rooks are usually going to keep your pass pawn under lock and key. However, there's still a king on the board, and the king still does care. So I'm saying in every endgame, there are kings on the board, and so in every endgame, an outside pass pawn could matter a little bit. Anyway, that's far away from where we are at, but just wanted to give you one calibration because you'd asked such a good question, Ken, about the isolated pawn. So in that position, I would say black actually has an advantage from that isolated passed pawn because, you know, their king is nicely centralized with it. It's giving them some extra like space and sway in the middle of the board. Not yet a huge danger to queen because the white king was right in front of it, blockading it. Anyway, so Rosenberg takes with the knight instead of the pawn and then quickly castles. So he's looking to bother white's king, and Tal's tactician needs to take that seriously, that black's hoping to do something a little bit weird to your king. So you want to kind of figure out where this king is going. There's too many rooks on the board at the moment to be relaxed about this. You really need a plan for getting the king out of there. King c2 to b1 is the closest shelter, but you need to carefully calculate bishop f5 before you play a move like king c2. Because I think king c2, bishop f5 probably loses a pawn. So that's a reason to check carefully. The move probably loses. All right, so Julian's got a very similar understanding as me about rook and pawn and queen and pawn. All right, Quarup. Who's your opponent, Quarup? All right, knight finds a nice square. And I suppose the idea is to maybe run this way. And on bishop f5, you could now block. But then there's still knight b4. The most tempting move is bishop f5, preparing rook a to d8. But if you play it in this order, white plays bishop d3 while this is hanging, right? So you have to spend another move dealing with this. And if you take, this knight comes here. It stops these knight moves, and the king's pretty well covered to get out of the middle now. So, all right, Quarup. Well, you still have several days for Arusha to answer you. I think the only thing you can do is contact them on chess.com. At some point, I will forfeit them if you never hear back from them. But obviously, it's more fun to play match. So you can send them a second message, and you probably have We're going to do about 2 weeks per round. So you probably have another like 10 days to hear from them and schedule something. I mean, we could Discord message them if we knew their Discord, but I don't know their Discord, Ken. So, I mean, Querapem could maybe try to find it, but there's too many people in this event for me to track down each person myself. So, I assume that those people who are interested in it and excited that they're in it will, you know, find their way to their matches. And that those who just aren't, there will be like a couple people who probably just get forfeited at some point because they're just not that into it, which could happen. Hey Daywin, thank you for the raid. Appreciate it. First time meeting you, so please introduce yourselves to us if you have an interest. Tell us about your stream, what you do, who you are, anything you might like to. Feel free to advertise to my viewers what you're about and to myself so that I know, you know, whether it's the kind of stream that we would like to raid when we send out raids. I try to send out raids based on who's doing material that my viewers are likely to enjoy. So I'm not rating based on if you're big or small or my friend or any of that sort of thing, but really what we're up to. Ah, you applied to season 2. Cool. All right, cool. There could be a Renek versus Nate Dogg match tonight. Yeah, I'm also a Discord novice, Querapem, so it's good you looked. You did what you could, I guess. Nice, Daywin. That's a good work right there. Cool. So if you got onto Ultimate Sensei, then you would get, you know, 2 months of training with a really good coach. So that would be nice for you. You worked hard these 6 months, huh? Good job, man. Chess is hard. 1600 is crazy in half a year. So props on that. You're doing good work. I hope you know there are going to be times when you're stuck for like an entire year without even gaining 1 point. I know you've probably just gained like 800 points in 6 months. And sometimes it can be a shock to someone like you when like it doesn't just keep rocketing up. You're giving up your career like you quit your job or something because you're in love with chess? Looks like Rosenberg's cranking up some pressure here, by the way, at the same moment. Oh, shoot, yeah. Yeah, the pandemic has caused some really rapid changes in the economy, which are, you know, structural changes in the economy, structural unemployment. It all sounds so theoretical and mathematical, but in real life, it's just brutal. Man. That's some pain. I'm sorry, Daywin. And sorry, I don't yet know if I should be saying Daywin or Daywin. But I'll get to know you. Die. Okay. Yeah, so how did Black get into this much trouble this fast? Let's see. Rook d8. After knight c5, that makes sense. Bishop d3 is somewhat logical. The other move you'd want to play is just like, get the heck out of there, right? But then bishop f5 comes. And on bishop d3, knight b4 wins your piece. Like, just, it's done. Triple attacked, and white's in check. So if the king goes to c2, bishop f5, there's nothing really good to do. The king could go hide on a3, right? Technically, that doesn't instantly get mated or anything, but it looks bad. Maybe it's best. Maybe it's best. That could be weirdly... That could be a weird situation where that might be the best, but I don't see an instant attack from black. I'm thinking maybe knight b4 to prevent white from developing and entertain ideas of knight c2 check. And I don't know if white can play b3, king here. Oh, rook d2 is being... Yeah, this is still pretty strong for black. Still pretty strong for black. Post, you're suggesting maybe knight d3 at the beginning, or... Okay, gotcha, Daywin. Well, Daiwin, I looking forward to seeing you around again. And yeah, it would be amazing to have you on the show. Sounds like. So, at the beginning or in response, yeah, probably at the beginning, post, because if you do it in response to bishop f5, the same move knight b4 is going to win this piece, right? Off of attacking it 3 times, right? So. Yeah, so maybe you could start with knight here. The thing is, now this bishop can't come out, right? And the one move white really wanted to play was bring out this bishop. So then black plays bishop f5, ratcheting up the tension, starting to threaten knight b4 and knight f4. White's really struggling to disentangle, to untangle, right? This king is just in the way. Hard to find a square for it. So alternatively... Fu says maybe king e2 on the first move here, but that also blocks in this bishop. Are you headed to f3 with your king? Maybe you are. Maybe you are. Could be an idea. King e2 to f3. You guys see white's going to have to do something awkward, actually, right? Like my idea of bringing the king to a3, or Fu's idea of going to f3 or similar. Like, the king can't quite get to somewhere good here. It's a problem. So check out what happens in the game. In the game... White plays bishop d3. Black plays rook b8, tempoing this pawn. Now, white can't go defend it with the king still because of knight check, right? And the king's going to have to defend this. Or actually, yeah, king c3, knight a2. So, you get forced back here, and then bishop f5, and you lose the game. So b3, then knight b4, threatening bishop f5, which would, again, win the game. This piece is under threat. So white just has to give up the a2 pawn here. Rook hd1. Grabs the pawn here, knight b4. With threat on this, could white take on a7? Like, are we certain that black has white dead to rights there after rook a7? White played king c3. But could white have played rook a7? Looks like the move rook d5 would win for black. The same move that Evan just played in the game. Maybe this move here, attacking the knight, which can't move because it's the only defender of the bishop. My cereal's all mush because this game, I haven't figured out how to eat on stream yet. But I really don't like melted shredded wheat. It's much better when it's still like cereal. Okay, everybody in chat, check out the disagreement between Fisher, Seb, and Niz. This is how you get better at chess, folks. By having an opinion that you believe in strongly enough to argue about it, you know? Like king e2, bishop g4, f3, the king's going to hide on a dark square now. So in this position, Niz says, the king's going to hide on a dark square, and the king's going to be safe. And Fisher Seb says the king is weaker than ever, and it doesn't matter that black doesn't have a queen. They're still going to make problems for white's king. Nice. We've got two diametrically opposed and plausible ideas about the same position. And then what Fischer Seb and Niz could do is they could play this position against each other again and again. That's how I got better at chess, was just doing that a million times with Jesse, with Josh Friedel, with Vinay Bhatt, Sam Shankland, just arguing about these things. And you just, if you believe in white, you know, Niz plays white, Fischer Seb plays black. You play each other just back and forth. You can take back any moves you need to and try something else, and you just go and you go and you go. And you would do this position for like 3 hours till one of the two people was like, okay, you're right about this position. Finally admitting it, right? And they'll say, well, you're right about this position, but only because I don't have like one little detail. Like if my pawn were on h6, I could start, you know, my attack would work or something like that, right? And that like argument after hours of going back and forth about that position leads to the players getting better at chess. So the fact that they're quick to stand up for their ideas and articulate those ideas is a sign that, you know, they know how to get better at chess. And that, you know, and that's why I always say you have to play moves that you believe in, not just moves you've memorized somewhere. If every move is your move and conforms to a chess idea of yours, then in the discussion of that move, whether it be in a game or a post-mortem, you're going to learn something. You have to always be repping your chess ideas. Has Jesse ever admitted that he was wrong? In chess positions all the time, Ernst, yeah. In like Dojo talks, it's very hard to change his mind or Kostya's mind or my mind, I think, about our ideas of like what the chess world should look like. But over the chessboard, sure, Jesse would still be stuck at, you know, 1600 if he hadn't changed his ideas about chess in the face of, you know, losses or mistakes or you know, just the data of working on the game. That's that's absolutely crucial. So just from the fact that he's good at chess, we know that he can change his mind about chess ideas. I know you are, Ernst. I'm just giving you an earnest answer anyway. And as far as my opinion about this question, Fischer Seb, I actually wondered about this, even though we didn't go into it in detail. I wondered, is it better for black to let the king go to f3 and then loose the bishop, or to check to make this little weakness with f3, but then you're also spending a tempo and the king tucks on f2? And I wasn't sure of the answer. I would have to calculate like mad to say which one of you I believe, Fischer Seb. Because it's really, really, really likely to be concrete. I mean, I'm sure black has a bit of an advantage because it's like clear it's going to take white time to fix these things. So king e2 or not, black's better. King f3 or f3, king f2, black's going to be better. But it's going to be some specific calculation, you know, around knight b4 with like the rook d2 idea. Around, you know, is rook b8 helpful, or does b3 help white enough that you don't even want to play this and you want to just like play one rook here and then the next rook to d8? You know, I just don't know. I just don't know without like a long calculation. Anyway, let's follow their game because it's exciting. King c3 was played. Rook d5 hitting that knight. Rook a5 defending it. Bishop f5. Oh, because this piece is undefended. White's got a lot of bad tactical elements here. It feels like they could be close to losing tactically. Bishop e2 though. That's a very good tactical defense. Okay, and white survives. White survives. Oh, look at that trap on rook a7. He's got rook check, king to the a file, rook a1 check, taking this. Even if king a2, he's got knight c3, king up, and then rook a1. That's a sick trap he had there. Sick trap from Evan. So the rooks get traded, which protects Evan's extra pawn on the a file. And see, white's got knight b7. White's got good chances here to save this game. They're down one pawn, but the black king's super far away from the action at the moment. On knight b7, maybe he sacks the whole queen side and goes for f2. That's not good enough. Not good enough, because you lose 2 pawns for 1, then white's got an outside passer. Yeah, of course, Niz is strong enough. Nobody's going to be in love with white's position. You know, Niz is just going to be like, I can hold. I can hold. King F2 is okay. Oh my gosh, Rosenberg goes for the F2 pawn, and I'm going to announce that Tal's Tactician now has the advantage. It's a huge shock, but it's true. The advantage now rests with white. Incredible. Now on knight d2, there's knight a5 protecting that pawn. Evan Rosenberg is in danger here in his first game against Tal's Tactician, who weathered that storm really well. Probably a5 wasn't great here. He knew this was coming, and then he'd have to go here or something. That's okay. You can do that. I think he just needed to start bringing his king to the game. No matter what, it was just what you had to do at that point. Now the king comes. Now the king comes. This could perhaps still be saved for black, but there's knights and kings that both care a lot about that pawn. Ooh, and that pawn's getting pretty far. Important, though, is king d6, b6, knight b3. That would save black right away. That's a big deal. If this pawn had crossed one more dark square, that would have been rough, rough, rough. Black pieces still need some coordination, but at least he's got the pawn under eye here. As Cartier says, he's trying to keep this pawn under lock and key now, right? It's as far as you go. This knight might be trapped too. That's what I meant about the pieces being sort of discoordinated. We could also trade. You could go knight e6 maybe. Try and trade into bishop versus knight. But I think the most dangerous is going to be an attempt to trap this piece right now. Like king d3. Knight b1. Can he trap it? I'm not sure. Maybe not quite. Yeah, Waffle Truck, this is game 1. Game 1. Knight a4. Ah, just looking for b6. That criminal's trying to escape. He's going to have like king c5. Yeah, oh man. He's playing this pretty well. On knight a3, bishop e4 more or less traps the knight. So the knight comes back this way, but it can't get back to the game still. And Evan's going to lose this game eventually. Tal's Tactician showing some really, really good endgame skills in this first game. Getting very close to winning. King d6 now is what I would do. Oh, he does it. It's so brutal. Knight into the middle. King goes over to the other side. It is dead at the level of these players. Ooh, Evan's still trying. No, it's done. G4, I don't think that can do it. King G4, Knight H2, King H5, I think is just good enough. No! Why do that? Well, I didn't calculate it. Maybe it works too. But this was pretty clear over here to just take it. Okay, Knight G3, King here. Yeah. There's no defense. He's not even threatening to take because of this. So you can play King G5, H4, whatever. Yeah, it was. So you're with me, Fisher said. It was very weird to see him play h4 when he could have just taken, right? It looks like it didn't really make much of a difference. King g6 is good relation to the knight. Maybe. Maybe. Knight check. Okay, good move. Now he's got to calculate h5. You don't have like 100 chances to win these positions. Sometimes you just have to calculate a tricky variation. Now knight d6. And then you have to play maybe king e6 in response. Hey, Amiro. Weird. Weird knight check. Okay. That works. That works, Tall. That works. He doesn't have the instincts of 1,000 hours of reading Averbach, but he's got some decent endgame skills. All right. Game 1. Game 1 to Tao's Tactician. 3 games to go. I don't know where November 21 comes from, Alex. Well, I haven't exactly announced like a due by date, but let me see. I'm hoping potentially to do the next round of these on November 27 and 28 on the weekend. So yeah, by the 21st would be great, actually. Yes, I don't know where you got that date, but you did good. You did good. Very nice win for Tao's Tactician. For anybody new and who can't read, this is a 4-game match. Time control's 15 minutes plus 5 seconds. You got to score 2.5 to win the match. If the match is 2-2 after 4 games, then there's tie breaks. Is anybody else playing their match right now? Let me check. Today is the 9th, and there's another match in 14 minutes between Sveshi and Mitch. Huh. Or maybe I wrote it down wrong. I feel like they were playing on Friday. Evan played fantastically in that All-Star tournament last weekend, MD Night. Oh yeah, I wrote that. Hey! Very good, Wrath of Gods. I did something correct then. That's super. What do you mean Nepo couldn't play under the Russian flag? All right, so we've got an exchange, King's Indian defense, DE, DE, trade, trade, boom. So looking at knight d5, and maybe, you know, in some positions you can take on e5. And this would keep black from winning back their pawn, maybe. But knight e6 was played, knight d5, rook d6. Take, take, b4. Trapping this knight over here. c6 is a sad move to spend a tempo on. And now c5. Okay, he doesn't let white lock in all the dark squares. If white played c5, that's really good news for white's bishop. So black fights back here. Yeah, I've seen rook d6 played somewhere before. Post. Doping sanctions against Russia. Oh my goodness. So the Russian who controls FIDE had to choose between his desire to see a Russian flag winning the world championship and his desire to eventually get chess into the Olympics, which is not happening. I think even rook d6 was normal, Niz. Tao's Tactician looks okay here. White's going to have to do something pretty immediate and dramatic, or otherwise black's going to get to play like knight e6, knight d4, and have the advantage. I guess the thing is there's not enough squares for these pieces. They both need to go through e6, right? So like if you play rook d1 here as white, threatening rook d8. If black plays knight e6, you take the pawn on e5, right? If black plays bishop e6, you take the pawn on e5. Because your rook needs e6, and so do the bishop and the knight. You can't play bishop d7 once there's a rook on d1. Yeah, okay, so rook d1 is still interesting from white. Even in the Olympiad, Russia played under an international flag, the whole Russian team. It doesn't make any sense. They're still playing, but they're not allowed. What's the point of, like, the sanction is your country can't play, except you can all can play. You just claim you're not playing for your country, and everyone knows you're really playing for your country. So did Russia not win the online Olympiad this year? Did it say FIDE won the Olympiad? I never saw that in any of the news stories about it. I think I even did a round of coverage. And nobody instructed me to call the Russian team something other than the Russian team. Yeah, that could be the plan, as Wrath of God says. It could be here, takes, here. And then on knight d3, there's still room to play b6 and hold this square. But I mean, we can say that then after like e5, the rook has to block this bishop in, and white's, you know, got a pretty healthy extra pawn here as well. You know, so it's not like white's without anything good. Knight c2 check is a thing? What's knight c2 check for? To go take on a3? No. White just defends c4, and then the knight's trapped on a3. Yeah, I mean, king c3 first to stop knight c4, Wrath of Gods. But yeah, king c3 first, and then you take the knight on a3 pretty much whenever you want it. My knight was on d3, Fisher said. Or at least I thought it was. That's why I'm defending the pawn. Maybe I'm wrong. Here's what I was thinking that we were talking about. I mean, knight d3 is not forced. And now this insane idea to send this guy over here. And now this is attacked. So I was thinking king c3. But this whole idea is just insane. There's no way you can play with a knight on a3 when you haven't brought out your pieces. Yeah, king c3, a6 is a long calculation. White has to play b6 to keep the rook from developing on a8. And then I know after rook takes b6, the knight has a chance to escape on b1, so white has to spend a move on bishop e2 to cover knight b1. But trust me when I say that this is not playable. I've calculated something, but I don't need to. Bishop e6 is met by knight takes c5. I've considered these moves. And if you play bishop e6 Wrath of Gods before putting your rook on b6, you're also trapping the rook on f6. So white can just play e5, right, and win your rook while they win the knight on a3 as well. I've got my chessboard on the side here. I was thinking I might try to like play their moves on a board for fun, just because I like, touching my chess pieces. But it's going pretty fast between trying to, read chat and look at the game and answer random questions outside of the game. So it's not quite happening. But man. Wish I were playing chess with real chess pieces. Deep thought for Tal's tactician here. c5 looked like a good fighting back move, but actually this rook d1 is quite annoying. Is rook e6 playable, asks Waffle Truck? Yeah, probably. I mean, probably that's what you should play, is defend your pawn. And then on rook check, maybe king g7. And the knight's defending the rook. Try to eventually untangle those pieces. You could play f6, rook e8, or you could play b6, bishop b7 from that position. Right, this is what we're talking about for black, right? Either f6 and then rook e8 to get this out, or b6 and then bishop b7, which does allow rook d7. So you could also play b6, rook e7, and then bishop b7. Something like that, I think, is the most likely thing for black to do. I think just defend the pawn here and grovel and hope that this one rook can't totally break you, since it's not accompanied by any other pieces, right? It's a little bit like the knight on a3, except with like an easy escape route on the d file. But it shouldn't usually completely break black when there's no other piece following it up. That might be possible Wrath of Gods in the position you're mentioning, yeah. If people are in theory, though, it does make sense to play a bunch of moves quickly and then have like a good think the first time you encounter a new idea. But that's more common at like a 2000 plus level with players who have like a lot of general, not just they've prepared a line, but they've prepared a lot of lines in their life, and they've got like a generally pretty good knowledge of their openings and sort of have a good sense of where and when to invest their thinking time. I'm not sure how obscure rook d6 is because I don't play this line with either side, and I knew the variation, and I don't study openings, so it's not that out of the blue of an idea or variation. All right, Fisher Seb, you get a trophy for predicting h4 here. I would play h6 for black and not really care, for what it's worth. Oh, but then you're going to play g3 and weaken the light squares. Oh, that's why h4 is an extra reason why h4 is really good. And Niz would have just let the h-pawn go in order to focus on coordinating the black pieces, which makes sense too. So Niz is saying maybe just play f6, allow h5, and then go here. Looks playable. Yeah. I don't see anything wrong with that. I approve. It's a good defensive idea. Okay, anyway, here we are. f6 comes in now, and of course, after bishop h3, he's planning rook e8 and then trades. If only the white king were on e2, they could do all those trades and then play rook d1 with the last rook and have an advantage still. But now it actually looks like this rook is going to be the last rook to the party. That's bad news for white. Is that true, Niz? Am I sparing in my praise for everyone or for you? I have a high opinion of your chess. How does black get the A rook out? At the moment, Portnoy, their plan is bishop h3, bishop takes c8, and then they're going to take like that. That's their current plan for getting the rook out. Current plan is that white's going to do it for them. Fisher Seb saying bishop h3 would be a blunder now. It does seem a little bit like that, Fisher Seb, but in that case, g3 wasn't very good here. But this bishop is in danger of being really bad, so I mean, maybe white just develops black's pieces and hangs in there. So Tal's Tactician, aka Rinked, for those who use Discord or maybe even Twitch chat may also use Rinked, seems to have made good use of a really long think after rook to d1. Almost 7 minutes of thought in that position from Rinked before choosing this rook e6 move, which I approve of. And then the next moves, h4 was a little bit of a surprise to them, so they had to think for another minute there, but they'd already sort of oriented to the position and could figure out what they wanted to do. f6 coming quickly. And looks like he's getting out of it okay. You like knight d2 to b3. Is there any problem with black just playing b6 then? It's just a plan to move that a pawn up the board. The knight on b3 does allow you to trade when the black knight comes to d4, which it probably will. I feel like white's just going to be worse, but I see your plan. Right, that's very likely Carte, and then black plays rook d8, white plays rook d1, rooks trade on d1, black plays knight e6, and I would guess the position's drawn. And that might be the best way for Evan to turtle up here, is trade everything on c8 and then play king e2, rook d1. We don't have to analyze every moment. It's nice. It's nice for the non-2200s, Fisher said, to have a moment where we don't do any long variations. It's a choice between developing the opponent's rook and getting rid of this terrible bishop, or sitting around with this terrible bishop and hoping you don't get eventually outplayed. The more I think about it, the more I think you just got to get rid of this piece. I think white can survive long enough to play king e2, rook d1, and get a suffering draw. That's true, Ernst. That is the pattern so far. A queenless middle game that looks scary. And he's coming out just fine from it again, I think. Okay, it's been an hour. I'm going to stretch my legs and walk around my room in a circle and look away from my computer screen. You all should do the same, probably. I mean, walk is a tricky word for a room this cluttered with kids' toys. Yeah. Oh, lovely rain in the Bay Area recently. Yeah, Evan's coming to grips with the fact that this game here, one of only two whites he's going to have this match, is not the game that he's going to play for an advantage in, and he's going to have to try and win one of the next two games probably. He's got to switch to defensive mode here. He chooses not to develop the opponent's pieces, but that bishop's going to remain suffering. So that means he's still hoping to outplay Tao's Tactician, I think. Because here, let me put on the board the variation that we were thinking. It goes like here, 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 here. Now there's knight e6 or rook d8. Right? This variation should probably be sufficient for white to hold. Like, if you had to choose who you were, I suppose you would choose black. Maybe knight e6 here, and then knight d4. You might choose black, but really, even something like this, there's a good chance that it's a draw, right? Just because the position is so locked up with not many pieces on the board. So, yeah, I mean, I think that what we were talking about was reasonable and holdable. So he plays bishop e2, rook e8. Now he's going to have to justify this bad piece all game. Knight e6, he castles. Okay, knight d4. Now he's going to take that piece. Now, if pawn takes, he'll probably immediately play c5. Sorry, I mean, by pawn takes, I mean, if c takes d4, he probably would have immediately done this, right? Improving this bishop and creating, potentially a passed pawn whenever he wants it right there. And this piece still needs somewhere to go because he's kept the active rook. But e takes d4 is played. Now he might need to put his bishop here to blockade this and defend this. Is his rook going to be trapped in some cases? Maybe. Maybe he'll want to play b6 to just mix things up, although it loses the a pawn. Well, for the moment, I think he needs to play bishop d3. One thing about king e7 is he'll always be able to play e5, actually. That'll always save the rook by breaking through the 6th rank. Unless there's already bishop on e6, which there will be. Okay. So now, he's going to play f4, yeah. Black's probably playing rook d8. Should still be within the realm of a draw. I think he's just going to trade off on d8. Play a4, a5. Black has technically the advantage in this position because of the protected passed pawn on d4 and the dark square pawn structure. But it may be so blocked up that it's still just a draw. It may just be like technically black's advantage without actually even being an advantage. So like Niz saying, just pretty level, maybe. Okay, so it's 11 a.m. Let's see if that other match is being played or if I was wrong about it. The Mitch and Sveshi match. Whoops. Let me just see. Mitch isn't online right now. Maybe I've got it wrong. Weak c4 pawn, but it's not really anything. f5 is not something you thought white would play. Yeah, me neither. This gives black some room. Basically, if you're defending, you don't want to create paths for the opponent into the game. But this does also create like winning ideas for white with the h5 isolated pawn on a light square, with the plan of g4 to make an outside pass pawn. I think white's going to want to trade rooks on the e file here. Interesting he's thinking here. I would think like rook e1 would be automatic or something. Oh, Fisher said these 4-game matches, you cannot expect anyone to easily win their match. You should not underestimate anybody's chances. These matches are going to be close. They're going to be close. The very first one went to tie breaks. Nobody is going to have an easy time in the Dojo Championships. That's what's part of what's going to make it so fun and epic. I think white's going to play rook e1 post, and rook e7 is going to be annoying enough that black will play rook e8 and trade rooks. I don't think they'll be able to play king h6, rook g8 while allowing white to play rook e7. All right, too big a threat. Rook g8, king h6, that kind of thing, white can just play king f2, and also you won't have that much counterplay. But rook e7 is huge. This is almost like a forced move in the endgame. Like your opponent... It's not like they're threatening to capture a piece, but they're threatening to like just put their rook on the 7th rank when there's a lot of juicy stuff there. And it's like you just have to play the move that doesn't let them do that. Right. There's a second move here, which is king f8, stopping rook e7, right? So technically, black had two moves that defended white's threat. So black could play king f8, try and keep the rook on the board in order to open a file with the rook at some point. Possible. Yeah. I don't know how good it would have been. Wow, bishop e4 is a weird move. And Tal's tactician says, are you really going to trade me this for this? The answer is going to be heck no. And Evan's just going to have wasted a move and come back here. Yeah, rook d7 technically a third defense to the rook e7 threat as well. Yeah. But if you don't want to, if you want to keep rooks on the board, king f8 is going to be a better move than rook d7. But yeah, technically 3 defenses to the threat. Okay, he comes back. He admits that bishop e4 was moronic. You can't be too proud as a chess player. You need to be able to say like, yep, that was a dumb move. See, now this position, the black king can't get to e5, and Evan can put his bishop here. He can play g4 at some point, turn this into a passed pawn. Black chose to bring the king here instead of h6, but that means that if white just plays g4, like let's say b6 for argument's sake, that's probably not a good move, but if this happens, this pawn is, you know, it's going to force the bishop into this area here. Probably still a draw, but something to keep an eye on. Bishop g8 played. a4 and now b6. Yeah. So b6 closes black's possibility of playing king here to here to here. But I guess it's not a big deal because if black played king c7, white can play a5. And you probably can't get your king through this area, right? There's just not enough room. If you play b6, a6, if you play a6, b6, and I don't think the king can get through on the queen side. So I think the position is kind of locked up no matter what. And should probably be a stalemate. But Rosenberg's looking at the plan of playing g4 takes, bishop takes at some point with maybe his king on d3 defending this. Then he wants to play h5, h6. When the bishop comes to h7, then he doesn't need to defend this anymore. He wants to bring his king back to e4 if black hasn't played king e5, which they will have. And then he would have the winning plan of bishop h5 to g6. But the thing is, if black retreats, that may give him the room to do what he wants to do. So Tal's tactician needs to be clear about whose job is which, right? Like which piece is stopping the h-pawn at the moment. It's got to be really, really clear. Yeah, at the moment it looks like a solidly drawn position, but the only like plan that anyone can really undertake is white can push their h-pawn to h6. Yeah, I think white should just sit, actually. I don't see any way for them to win, so that looks correct. Here comes game 3. Will Tal's tactician repeat the same opening that got them in so much trouble? Even though they won the game, their position around move 12 to 20 looked really bad. Isn't it, Niz? Isn't it intense? Yes. And in the semis, it's going to be 6-game matches. And in the finals, it's going to be an 8-game match. That's weird, Waffle Truck. It's 1.5 to 1/2 for Tal's tactician right now. Knight e4, huh? I don't know theory here, Fisher said, but I've always played d5 for black. Queen e2. Black could play knight c5, but they could also play bishop b4 check, which is a move that that Evan played in the previous game in a different position, but it means as an e4, e5 player, he's got his eye out for bishop b4 opportunities. You can play bishop b4 because after c3 leaving 2 pieces attacked, you just take and leave the knight hanging. And you have this. Right? He played it. Read it. Knight c5 is more usual, says Defanius. Yeah. Knight c5 certainly looked very logical to this line. But Evan goes for it. Now, what I don't like about bishop b4 moves is when the opponent can just play like knight d2 and you take and the bishop takes and the queen comes off of d1 and captures. And you've sort of developed white's entire queen side for them, right? But here, white's already made a move on the queen, so she's not gaining time when she goes to d2. And black's knight is under threat, so trading it is a way to, like, you know, save time compared to just retreating it. So here I would have been... Here bishop b4 made some sense to me. But this is a very nice idea from Tal's tactician. c3 takes and then just castles. So now if pawn takes, bishop takes, white gets like a, what is it called? A Danish gambit on like absolute steroids. Oh my gosh, this is complicated. Pawn takes c3 might win. Oh no, he'll play knight c4, not knight f3. I assumed he was going to like take with check or something. What on earth is knight d2 says this? Yeah, it's a surprise move. I mean, Tal's tactician has not had a chance to play tactically yet this entire match. But this game here is promising some options, right? I mean, this would be like an amazing Danish gambit, I think is what that gambit is called. And if the knight retreated here, then after knight c3, we have an amazing like Goring gambit, basically, right? Where white gives like these 2 pawns for this pawn, but you can see the black pieces are weirdly placed, and white's development lead is palpable. Not only that, there might just be this move here, crushingly painful. Only doubt would be this. But even with queen b2, I can't play f6. So knight e7, queen b4. Pretty good for white. So I don't know that there was like a good or easy move for Evan to play here to just get himself developed. And so he came up with this thing. Tal's tactician plays pawn takes c3, like what I was thinking. So now I'm sort of thinking he's got to play knight c4 here. Because knight f3, queen f3, now there's checkmate as well as the bishop hanging. Knight e5, trying to save this with tempo. Rook e1. And now white's threatening rook takes knight and pawn takes bishop. And checkmate again because the knight's not really defending it anymore. Yeah, Ken, I feel like the Danish is when black takes all the pawns all the way to b2. And if white recaptures a pawn on c3 with the knight, then it's sort of like the Goring gambit structure or position. So, but this move knight c4 might be playable. Oh shoot, the problem there is going to be this. Pawn takes, you're attacked. You go here, and now this move again, right? Oh. Thud, we have to play knight e7. Knight c3, castles here. Look at the space that black has. Like, normally they would need to play like f6 or d6 or something. But, you know, d6 loses the piece after pawn takes pawn. And f6 just ravages your own Kingside, right? When you've got this bad development. Oh my goodness. There are shades of Morphe NN here, Defanius, for sure. This has the potential. This has the potential to end the match right here for Tal's Tactician with a nice blowout. Evan got a plus score against an insane team of strong titled players this weekend, and now getting rocked by a Dojo rival. Yikes. Bishop b4, I guess, kind of asked for it a little bit, and Tal's Tactician was willing to give it. Knight d2. That kind of moves rarely. Gonna be good enough. Well, here's Speshi playing, but not against Mitch. So I must have had the date wrong for the Speshi Mitch match. I think in my mind, I remember it being this Friday at 11 instead of 10. But I clearly wrote it wrong in the date situation there. Hey, Jason. I would say with no time to improve or learn anything, he would be like maybe 2100. But I think within a year he would be like a very strong grandmaster. But if you just plucked him out of time and threw him straight into like a weekend tournament, you know, he would have a tough time against a player like Chess Gaines. You know, that'll be a pretty darn tough matchup for Morphe. But the thing is, Morphe had like never played anybody better than like, I don't know, 1800 or so, or so, you know, like, and yeah, and ideas were just not that developed yet at the time. People get better at stuff over time, right? It's like you could take some like super genius scientist from hundreds of years ago, like take Galileo out of time, give him no time to learn anything new, throw him down at like NASA control and like, you know, see if he could like, you know, explain how to build a rocket ship. Like, good luck, right? Good luck. So it would take some time. But there's no question that Morphe was like an absolute genius who came up with ideas that no one before him had come up with, right? He developed and contributed a lot of ideas to the chess world. So a genius like that would absorb the stuff we've learned in the last 150 years. He would absorb it really fast. He would be extremely strong within a year. Extremely. I agree, Jason. He was never challenged fully. And honestly, you could even say the same about Fischer. Fischer managed to get way ahead of his time. He was never properly challenged. That's like another player who I say, like, you know, his peak rating is not properly defined for Fischer, I think, because his rating was increasing at the time of his retirement. And the gap between him and the other players was so huge that it starts to break rating formulas. You know, I had this conversation with Sam Shanklin recently, you know, about, you know, because like me, Sam doesn't really think there's been rating inflation, right? So he says like, well, you know, when Caruana was, you know, at his peak, like 2830, 2840, you know, he was better than Karpov. he was almost as good as Kasparov. Like, you know, so like the argument would be like the third best player of all time. We know the two best players of all time are Magnus Carlsen and Gary Kasparov. But then the question is like the number 3 best player of all time is that Fabiano Caruana because he has the third highest peak rating, right? Probably. But then, you know, number 4, Levon Aronian or Bobby Fischer, it's really hard to say because that's where I was saying to Sam, like, yes, Fischer's peak rating is 2785. And yes, Sam and I both agree there hasn't been inflation. So then you would say, okay, so Fischer would be like 2785-ish. Nowadays, he would be comparable to like Jan Nepomniachtchi or something like that. Well, maybe, except I think Fischer's rating isn't properly defined because Spassky was like 26, I don't know, maybe 30. And then like the next best players were like 26-0-0 or so. And for one thing, Fischer beat somebody like Larson like 6-0. You can't measure somebody's strength when they're winning every game. It's just absolutely undefined. Like absolutely undefined. And also, like I asked Sam, like how accurate would like ratings be of current FIDE players if you took somebody rated like 2780 and made them play just hundreds of games against somebody rated like 2590? Right? The fact is their rating would get dragged down by draws over time, probably. That's what Sam thought. Like if you took somebody like, Nepo, for example, and made him play like hundreds of games against players rated 2590 to 2600 FIDE nowadays, like his rating wouldn't be 2790. It would probably be lower than that because it would get dragged down by draws with those players over time. Like, and it just wouldn't give you like an accurate reflection of it wouldn't give you a fully accurate reflection of his strength because the rating formulas don't perfectly work when the rating gaps between the players are too large. Sorry, I'm not reading any interesting things being said in chat right now because I'm trying to formulate this correctly and accurately. And I don't want to mischaracterize anything that Sam said either. So I think that since Fischer's rating was going up at the time when he quit, and since his rating already was maybe poorly defined by the level of opposition he was facing, Fischer may well have been stronger than his peak rating, even though I don't think there's been inflation, even though I think ratings are generally accurate. I think Fischer would be an example where the rating was not very accurate. And he was certainly over 2800 strength, but I don't know if, Fischer was 2820 or 2840 or 2850 or whatever, like I'm not good enough to judge the quality of players at that level by looking at their games. But my basic understanding of the math suggests that he had to be some amount better than his peak rating. That's my thought. Who would have won between Fischer or Karpov? I mean, in terms of strength, Fischer for sure. But chess is psychological. I mean, you could say Fischer lost because he was too scared to show up. So if you hypothetically make him have just enough courage to show up, but it's maybe not enough courage to win, even though he's the better player. You know what I mean? By the way, the players have on the board right now a position that we suggested 10 minutes ago, right? These were all the moves that I suggested. The knight would come to b6, bishop g5 would happen, forcing the knight to a bad square. And then after rook d1, right, I said d6 would lose a piece, f6 would open up your king when you're not well placed for it. Really kind of nothing for black to do. Rook e1 and knight b5 is going to force queen d8. Jesus, you could even do this maybe for white right here. And just paralyze black. No, black can still try f6. People talk about Magnus being dominant because at some point his rating was 75 points higher than the number 2 player in the world, which was inconceivable for 20 years before that, or for 10 to 20 years before that, right? Because Like when Anand was world champion, his rating was like plus or minus 5 points of Kramnik, right? Like they're like neck and neck, and Topalov was neck and neck with those two. But Fischer was like easily 150 points stronger than Spassky. I mean, a gulf, a chasm, more than twice the gap between Magnus and players like Aronian or Anand or Fabi. So it's I think Fischer's strength was a little bit undefined there. Right, so Fischer said your OTB rating can't cross 2,000 because the gap between you and the next best players in the tournaments you're playing in is too big to get a properly accurate rating for you. So I can say, Fischer Seb, you're like obviously over 2,000 strength. You know, I don't have to think hard about that. If I had to say, like, are you over 2,100 FIDE strength, I might not be fully confident. Because I would guess you're like 2,100 to 2,150 FIDE strength, but that's like a guess, and I'm like not 100% confident. But that your rating can't break 2,000 says like something's weird with the rating pool, right? So. I'm now looking through some of the things in the chat. Yeah, Revolver Ocelot, this is a championship for the whole year for our club. So we'll do another championship next year, but that's a long time away. But we run tournaments all the time. So what I would say is, you know, follow us, join our Discord, join our chess.com group, which has tournaments in it, and just start playing in all our tournaments. If you like playing chess, that is. Because there's always some tournaments going on. I don't know, Foos. Fischer's rating should have been a little bit higher than that before the match with Spassky because it ended at 27.85. But at those times, I think FIDE ratings may have been published only once every 6 months. So that 27.20, if it were his published rating, it might not have reflected some of his candidates' match wins yet. So that might have been his published rating, and his like live rating might already have been, 20 or 30 points higher than that. I don't know well enough, but I would guess that like at the end of the match when Fischer retired that he was about 27.85 and Spassky was probably about 26.30 to 40, something like that, right? So it's like a huge gap, like 150 points. And if you look at the next player after Spassky, it was another like 20 or 30 rating points lower. So it was just insane. I agree, Jason. There was an element of psychology that his opponents were terrified and he was brutalizing them. But I wouldn't say that's like unfair to call that part of his strength, right? If you can play so well that you terrorize your opponents into playing worse over a stretch of, 20, 30, 40 tournament games spanning over a year with them having time to study your games and prepare for you with the world championship title on the line, then that's just part of your strength. I mean, I think Gary terrorized his opponents somewhat, not to the point of being able to like establish a 150 point rating gulf. But, I think part of his gulf between him and his opponents was like 50% strength, 20 points intimidation or something. Or I think that's part of your game is if you can like dominate psychologically. Tal's tactician is probably dominating Evan's psychology right now, right? Like if Evan makes a mistake at some point this game, could you say, oh, well, inflated performance, he was intimidated by Tal's tactician? I mean, he's getting terrorized here. Yeah, those 6-0 matches are insane, as Fisher Seb says. And by the way, Sam Shankland said in that conversation, like, despite that golf and despite us overall saying that the ratings are stable, he said that modern 2600s would not lose 0-6 to Fisher. Like, they could get some draws with White because of some of the ways in which players have changed. So, like, a 2600 modern player overall would have the same strength as a 2600 player 50 years ago, but like they'd be stronger in like opening prep, right? They'd be stronger in knowing certain like structures. They might be a little bit less good in like creative calculation and coming up with moves and openings that they don't happen if they get caught out of prep and stuff like that. Like there's going to be differences in what the relative strength and weaknesses are, for sure. So one of the things is like a modern player wouldn't lose 0-6 to Fisher, he thinks. But over lots and lots of matches, they also like wouldn't ever manage to beat Fisher. A modern 2600, that is, right? The latter might be less sustainable. Although, from a certain perspective, Jason, the longer you maintain it, the more it becomes part of it. Like, you could hide your decline behind your opponent's fear of you when you eventually get a bit older. Okay, so Evan like does something other than sitting on the back rank and waiting to lose. If he didn't do something here, then White would play f5, knight e7, and put a pawn on f6, and then checkmate his king. So this was the last chance for Black to move this game, and he moved with h6. He's put himself into a tough spot, though, by running out of time as well. Now Black is technically up 2 pawns, although, I mean, these are 2 of them. This can move, and technically Black might be able to move the D pawn now. Now they can't because White's just going to put the pawn on e6. Playing the London would not actually be how to get a draw against Fisher, by the way, Steve North, for modern players. What they would need to do is actually play like sharp 1e4 lines that they know the opening theory really well on. And those sharper lines, Fisher would have to find precise moves, and they would lead to like trades, and the tension evaporates out of the position while the player playing White is still within like the scheme that they know. You get a lot of trades, and it simplifies down into a position that they're still comfortable with. If you postpone the fight until later in the game and not take advantage of your opening knowledge as a modern 2600 player against Fisher, and you play some sort of, delay the fight opening like a London system, you're actually increasing your chances of losing. All right, Queen e7 holds on to one of the funky pawns. Yeah, Jason has the same opinion as me. All right, Queen here, holding him off. You guys want to practice, like, figuring out how to win a position like this for White? You guys want to sort of, like, think of what you would do if you were White in this position? It's more fun than thinking of what you'd do as Black. Rook lift. Ursus wants to lift. Would you bring a rook to g3, Ursus, and then just start like collecting all these pawns, even if it includes a queen trade? Just transfer the advantage you have towards the endgame as you collect all the pawns, and when black plays d6, you're going to play e6, so they're never going to really coordinate their pieces even towards the endgame. That's what you're thinking, huh? I don't think black's going to take on b4, Stamen. Okay, Tal's Tactician looks to trade off this piece since it can't be replaced. So he's looking for a mating attack. White is looking for a mating attack. They want to not let any of these three pieces over to the king side. They want to trade one rook and then bring the knights. You do what you got to do when you're defending and when you have no time. Rosenberg takes the pawn on e5. And now he could finally move the d pawn without white playing e6. I was thinking about knight e4 too, Niz. Absolutely. I don't know, BG Cube. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Very good question whether knight e4 would have been good. I mean, this would be good. Rook f4 you could take or just go to g3. Queen e5. Knight g5, queen f4. And this is the best I see for white. We threaten mate. So black shouldn't ever go that way, right? And a draw. That's one line for you, Niz. That could happen with knight e4. But, all right, we're going to follow the game since they don't have that much time. Queen takes e5. Tal's Tactician retreats queen d1, and it feels like Evan's back in the game. Throws in queen e3 check. Who knows why? Oh, he's going to take the knight on c3 and stop queen b3 at the same time? Oh my god, he's gunning for the knight. Oh my god, he takes the knight. Tal's Tactician needs something really, really murderous right now. Queen e2 to e8. But does that even win? The black king goes to h7. And he's got like full side protection. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Fisher Seb says knight e6. You could probably just take it. All right, rook f3. Queen c4. Oh, Evan takes another pawn. He can't get enough. He's a hungry, hungry hippo, is Evan today. He eats everything on offer. He's loving the buffet. Queen e2. He's going to take this too? No, that's checkmate in 2. No, and then queen h4. He might take it all. He might take it all. He's also got queen b1, right? That forces a retreating move, but then he can't stop queen e8 after that, right? Okay. Can he stop queen e8? I don't think any piece can cover that. He might have to take, check, here, check, queen here. Oh, he covers rook h3. Oh. I was like, did he just allow mate in 2 after a deep think? No, he's covering rook h3. Oh. Oh. Can you guys imagine Evan's face? For those of you who watched him over All-Star Weekend at any point this week, can you now imagine his face in a position like this where like he thinks he's stopping checkmate, but he's only got some seconds on the clock. He's not sure that there isn't something he might have missed. Is queen e8 still a move? Yeah. Queen e8's a move. Knight e6 is a move. Absolutely. On 96, oh, he doesn't go for it. Now one option is queen b5 covering that square. He can also check first, see where white retreats, then come back. Oh, Evan just doesn't even care anymore. He just centralizes the queen randomly without too specific a line in mind. I think he's just winning here. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Brutal shock. Bishop f5, queen c5. Oh, this is intense. Folks, I think he totally messed that up. He was low on time, right? But queen b5, right? And you can also check first. Make white, retreat one of these pieces, right? And then you go queen b5, covering this. What's white supposed to do? I mean, what is white supposed to do? But resign. I mean, it's like minus 10 at this point, I think. Oh, but one last threat from white that he walks into. Queen d6 just didn't do anything. It was a very random move. Rook e8 is correct. With the threat of bishop c2 and then back rank mate. So white's got to make one of these moves. White plays knight e3. That is risky. Like knight a4. What are you going for? Queen c1. Knight c4. Oh! Ouch! A blow. A blow. Why not just h3 MD Knight asks. Indeed, MD Knight, when you're threatened with back rank mate, make a luft. Don't play fancy piece moves trying to defend it. I mean, that's not a hard and fast rule. If you've got time on the clock and you're a confident calculator, you can do so. But this was too risky. What? Now knight e3 wins. Straight onto the square where all the white pieces are attacking. Knight e3 resigns. And of course Evan finds that. Good Lord. What's wrong with moving the king? What's going on? Come on. And he re-back rank mates himself too. Not to mention, I mean, bishop f3 wins here too, probably. Right? I mean, every move wins. That threatens rook e1 and rook e2. But knight e3 is the simplest, and Evan with an insane comeback win keeps the match going. You thought g4 was brilliant resistance. Holy moly. All right, now we're going to head back into what? Another exchange King's Indian? What do you guys think? Is Evan going to repeat that thing? h3. Oh, it's coming again. Terrible. No, please. We don't want this. Offer a draw here just to take us to sudden death. There's no value in offering a draw. The tiebreak is you just keep playing 15 plus 5, I mean, for Evan, it's basically already tiebreak time, right? If you win here, you win the match. If you draw, the match keeps going. So, in a sense, our tiebreak system for after game 4 means that game 3 is already the tiebreak. Is that after game 3, you're already in the tiebreaker if the match is tied at that point. NN won. It couldn't have been Morphy NN, I guess, because Morphy never lost to NN, right, Seb? Well, this is the top section of our Dojo Club Championships. We also have 3 other sections that may be more appropriate to watch at some point. And hopefully, which we will get a chance to see some matches of. It looks like we've got matches in all 4 categories probably scheduled for Friday. It's too bad we only have 1 right now, but it's a good one. It's a barn burner. The thing is, every one of these matches is going to be amazing, but we've got 16 matches. I can't cover them all. So there's going to be some amazing matches played that we don't see. Actually, there's more than 16. There's 20 matches. So because of some prelims. Why wasn't the knight hanging? Let me see. At which point? Knight e5. Rook here. Okay, so black plays a different line here. Instead of knight a6 last game, playing c6 here. Evan takes the pawn. Castles. Ah, you're wondering about this. because of rook check, and this bishop is hanging. And on rook e8, bishop takes knight, defends the rook. And if you take here, you lose the rook on e8. This is a very important tactic. Good that you asked about it, Stamen. Neve Stort, this is the first time we've organized the Dojo Championships. We didn't do one in 2020, but this is not the first match that's been played of the Dojo Championships. At least 2 matches were already played. One of them I covered yesterday at the same time. That's right, Steve North. That is what chess is for many people. You see this tricky tactic, Stamen? You see how white regains the piece here for sure with this rook move? If the knight blocked, if the knight blocked and you took and they took, then I guess you have here. You might also, if the knight blocks, would you want to throw in bishop f4? Yeah, you could also throw in bishop f4 here. So anyway, so this knight moved away. White saves their knight on f3. We get a trade. Bishop back, and here we go. Bishop back stops knight f2. Black could recover their pawn. They're down with this move, but then after knight takes, rook takes, they would lose as well. Well, I'll just show you. Well, anyone want to try and like calculate this thing here for a moment? Bishop e5, knight e5, rook e5. The rook comes back to d8 check. King has to go up to g7, and then the idea for white is bishop d4. That was emotional, and you weren't even playing. Yeah, that's right. Really watching a great match and enjoying it can be like that, Steve. It can be emotional. We can get into it without actually being in the match ourselves, for sure. You're going to make a chess calendar with Steve North quotes. He already gave you a second one. You're only like 1 minute into your project. And you've already got that. Occasional moments of joy interspersed with long periods of self-loathing. And that was emotional for me. And hell, I'm not even playing. MD Knight's motivated. Yeah, there's motivation cycles too, right? You play, you get motivated. You study, you get motivated. You play, you get motivated. You study, you get motivated. You play, sort of back and forth. Ideally, is the upward cycle you can get where play and study support each other. F6, just trading the white pawn on e5 that looked a little bit weak and just accepting to be down a pawn all game. He's just like, yeah, I'm going to play this game without a pawn. Oh, bishop d3, trying to rock that knight on e4 where it stands. But it does let black play f5, maybe a tricky two-step where if black had played f5 in one move, white would have taken en passant. And now the pawn can actually slip by the e5 pawn. Yeah, it does. And now we get like a little bit of a blockade with fair chances of white losing the pawn on e5 eventually. If black had draw odds, who would I take? Fisher said. Well, that's a well-calibrated question because this is probably about 50-50 odds on your question. Black with draw odds probably has about a 50% chance here. Like, in other words, a draw or a win for black together, probably similarly probable to a white win at this point. White's up a healthy pawn. But black has, plenty of defensive resources still. In a classical game, with like GMs and such, white would never lose, basically. Or, 2%. So it would basically just be, 50% draw, 50% white wins. But in a rapid game with non-super GMs, there's probably all kinds of stuff that can still happen. Players could still win with black and so forth. Sure, Falk. It's their second time playing this variation, H3 against the King's Indian by Rosenberg, followed by an exchange, King's Indian. And he plays bishop g5 here. Last game, Tal's tactician, 2 games ago, but the last time Tal had black, he played knight a6. This time we get this pawn sack this way here. By the way, folks, knight e4 still loses to rook d8. There's a whole lot of different ways that you can lose to this move, rook d8. So, here's another one of them. So black brought the knight from a6 into the game. They traded on e4. f2 is hanging, so white plays bishop e3. Bishop takes e5 is losing here for another rook d8 tactic, which maybe you saw me mention already. And here we are. Rosenberg trying to tear things open. He claims he tries to channel Petrosian, but I see a lot of pretty aggressive moves out of Evan, actually. Maybe he doesn't realize some of his own urges. Because he does like to just, like, throw a pawn in his opponent's face when he gets the chance and just try and, like, tear apart structures. You know, like, remember, like, well, I mean, Falk won't remember, but some of you will remember the previous exchange King's Indian defense when he played, like, h4, trying to play h5, right? And the opponent played h5, and then he played g3, going for bishop h3. He was really trying to just, like, just jam something into that game, right? Just force it. And then realized it wasn't working. So, and then if you remember the game with Josiah, there was a point where he played the e4 pawn sack, so that like d takes e4, c4, and the pawns could roll on the other side. And that e4 move was a real like aggressive, you know, jam it at your opponent move. I mean, it was a great move. I'm not saying these moves are necessarily good or bad. It's just I do see a certain instinct from him to play more aggressively than he maybe credits himself for playing. Now, I like this g-file opening for him. What else could Tal's tactician have done to defend against this? Is there any idea behind taking here? No, because white doesn't even have to go for this. If you take here, white can just take like this and you still got this problem. But maybe you want to take on f5. Maybe king h8. That doesn't sound like an amazing move. Maybe rook f8. Threatening some tactics here. And then if white takes, bishop takes. And then this rook can come to one of these squares. I guess that's like a... I mean, if we have to come up with a candidate, that's another way he could have played. Evan's Norm tournament, as far as I know, is in December, Neve. And I'm certain he hasn't played it yet. It may be in November. I may be wrong about the December thing, but he definitely hasn't played it yet. That is true. Oh. Okay, king h8. Yeah, that had to be played, but still, you know, knight g5 has some juice to it, and bishop takes, pawn takes, knight g5 has some juice. So it's a risky situation. Of course, there's simple like rook g2 covering the f pawn and preparing more things moving that way. Bishop h6. Yeah, bishop h6 could be a tactic somewhere. I guess not here, though. Might be good to put the bishop on d4, but then I suppose on rook d8, what are we doing with it? Yeah. What about knight g5 here? What happens then? Black takes. White takes. Pawn takes. Bishop takes. So it just opens up the center a little bit. Black can't take on c4 because of rook d7, I think. So, but so it's sort of an even trade, and so it doesn't clearly favor either player. If bishop takes e4 and then knight g5, can black ignore bishop e5 there as well? Seems so. Yeah, so rook g2 is very prudent, and it's played. Distracting the black rook here eventually to adopt a defensive posture versus white is going to take pressure off of white's e5 pawn. So it's not just symmetrical. And also black doesn't have a good square to move the bishop to while keeping the rooks protecting each other in order to trade all the rooks off. So actually like rook g8, rook g1, the only square to go to is f8. And then you're only trading one rook, not two. White keeps the file. And white can advance there. You know, white can advance. They could play knight g5 there also. Which looks probably like kind of bad for black, right? The pressure's off of this. Knight g5 hitting this. Knight takes, bishop takes, threatening this. Bishop here, f4. Now, that locks down this as a weakness. It strengthens white's e5 pawn, and the rooks are pretty happy here. This looks like progress for white. Oh, we're even stopping rook d8. So this position would be winning for white, I would go so far as to say. So I don't think rook g8 looks great. Black plays b5, looking for counterplay on the queen side. And Fisher Seb saying rook g8, knight d4 might be good for white too. Yeah, might be. Speaking of which, b5 put another thing that's like hanging against knight d4 at some point. What's happening in Falk's variation? White would need a knockout to go for this, and there isn't one. I mean, they've got the rook on the 7th rank. They can keep playing. Here, rook c8. Maybe take this one. Maybe you go rook c7, and if black goes this way, you bother this. Let's go here. I don't know. I don't think that's the best white can do. Yeah, Fisher Seb says, just trade once and play king b1 and ask black what they're doing. And the answer is probably not too much. You just dodge out of any counterplay there. It's a very practical choice. And like very strong choice probably. Bishop f8, c5. I don't like that idea either, Foos. I feel like if you play bishop f8 taking pressure off of this, I think knight g5 is going to be very strong for white anytime you do that. So like here, probably just direct knight g5. The moment black's not attacking e5. We just go here, threatening to, take this or to win a pawn on e4. And if black trades, then I just love the idea always of threatening this. There's no time for bishop c5. And I love playing f4 for white. Nailing this pawn down and strengthening this one. Making it a protected passer instead of sort of like a loose pawn. I think that always helps white a lot, right? Because this pawn here, it's like a little bit of a weakness for white. And if you imagine this pawn on f4, it's not anymore. So that's a tremendous achievement for white. And if we can achieve f4 by playing knight d4 and then f4, I'm down with that too. But I would love a chance to play, like, to get away with a decent knight move and have time for f4. Take b5, black might take on a2. Yeah, they might. I'm kind of like, good luck, black. But yeah, I suppose they might. Here, 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 and then just, something like this. Like, they're just sort of hoping that, somehow white gets caught in a weird net. So white's move here. You could probably also play c5, b3. But all these moves had their downsides. So this is like a nice try by Tal's tactician to get Evan in time trouble. Note that even after Evan escaped last game, He did play one blunder in time pressure with queen d6, and it almost cost him the game. Yes, he won very quickly after the blunder, and so you didn't get a lot of time to sit there thinking like, oh man, he must really regret the blunder. But queen d6 was a big blunder, and he could have lost the game as a result of it. So time pressure does matter here. 5-second increments, not a lot. He played the tournament this weekend on a 30-second increment, so playing with a 5-second increment today is an adjustment. Okay, I think he'll probably just play bishop c2 now. But we also haven't calculated bishop takes, pawn takes, knight g5. Yeah, that's not good, probably. Evan down 6 minutes of time here. That's like a lot. There's still a lot going on in the game. And I don't think that like the next move is yet gonna, win or lose a piece. I think it's still, a very good position for white, but these decisions are still pre-critical decisions. They're kind of like important in a classical game, but they're not yet the moves that win or lose the game. I don't say that to criticize Evan's time use, but to say he does still need time on the clock for some more decisions that are yet to come. Okay, I predict one move correctly from Evan. Bishop c2. So he's looking at basically getting black to play a move like bishop f8, because the bishop's hit, and then go knight g5, knight takes, bishop takes, and play this position here, where black's achievement of getting the second c-pawn doesn't matter too much yet. Is rook g8 a move, some might wonder? Knight d4, potentially a problem against that. Not a lot of candidate moves for black here, right? Rook e7, bishop f8. Rook e7, knight d4 also looks really bad, actually. Maybe really bad is too strong, but yeah. Yeah, I guess it's not like a refutation, like you see knight d4 and you can't play rook e7, but definitely it's going to be a tough position for black. Yeah, cat is a dog. I think Evan probably wishes he had another like 3 or 4 minutes here. Tal's tactician definitely doing well with the time usage. Let me make sure that he actually played that and I didn't do it. Yeah, he played rook g8. Yeah, that's right, Penguin. Black's choice was restricted to moves that saved the bishop. So there was like bishop f8, rook g8, and rook e7 were the only 3 candidate moves we'd considered there. So here I was thinking of knight to g5, right? No, because the bishop's still here. I was thinking knight d4 here. It was only on bishop f8 that I was thinking knight g5. So here I'm expecting knight d4. still. Hitting the bishop, hitting, you know, some isolated pawns, and it comes quickly from Evan. Quickly enough, 30 seconds. That's okay. It could have also come in like 2 seconds, really, if he wanted to up the pressure. All right, Tal's Tactician responds. I think F4 here. Hang on, what happens on F3? I had missed something with F3, which is that here the piece is attacked. So it might have to go back here. And then you can play here. Because on bishop e5, you trade all the rooks on g8 and then win a knight. Evan played knight e6, rook e6, f3. Okay, so here there's no knight c5 for sure. There's no knight d2, no knight c3, no knight f2, no knight g3, no knight g5 or d6 or f6 or anywhere. That piece is done. Woohoo! No, Putsy, they stick with the time control. Yeah, f4 seems to be the only move to keep the ball in play a little bit longer. Tal's Tactician plays it. Now on bishop f4, there's knight c5. And then if bishop f5, knight d3, check, actually. Keeps black in the game. Maybe bishop a7 is a good move here. It's a little bit far afield, that pawn, but what's the plan then for black? Oh, the knight goes to g3 then, yeah. That's a good plan. My bad. Yeah, there are seedings, MD Knight, based on people's scores in the Mega Rapid and how they performed there. So, for example, Tal's Tactician is the 3rd seed, and Rosenberg is the 6th seed in this section. So knight comes to c5. It's got a saving move on d3 now to take the game, to remove black's to remove the bishop pair from the equation. I think bishop e3 could be played right here. If rook e5, then I'm thinking bishop d4 would win. Or actually, if rook e5, then maybe just rook takes g7. Rook takes g7. No, it would not work. Yeah, so it would be bishop d4. And then if the knight moves to d3, you can trade once and push f4. Looks pretty good for white. Yeah, it looks pretty good for white. You and Evan, cat is dog. You and Evan. King d2. He boldly comes. He boldly comes. Steps out of check on d3. It's a risky move to make with so little time. I would really seize the moment to play f4. I think that's critical. So bishop e3, unless I'm miscalculating something, would have been the right move. I mean, maybe he wasn't sure about this. But this isn't a problem. This is easy to convert. It's a knight against a rook in an endgame. And the rook not only has an open file, it has an open 7th rank too. It's just winning. King d2. Yeah, rook d8 comes. Now if king here, bishop e5 is what Fisher Seb and I are both expecting. Bishop h6 in that line. Okay, so I say here. You say here, here, check. Oh yeah, but Oinus, this rook can't get away anymore, right? So the king can move anywhere it wants, and black will lose. Later on in that line. Okay, bishop e5 check comes in. And black seems to have sort of saved the game. Sort of. We don't know yet for sure. Rook g7 next? Perhaps. Rook h5 then. It's a delicate balancing act here. King c4 is also playable, right? Straight off the bat. But yeah, Evan's going to play the direct move. Pound into the 7th rank here. Tao's tactician, to his credit, saw this coming and plays the move quickly here, putting more pressure on Evan because he's looked ahead. Back when he was choosing to go rook d8 and take on e5. And Evan using more time, I mean, he's just got to play king c4 faster than that at some point. Tao's tactician knows what they want to do. Now rook e7, perhaps? Okay, just goes for that. Oh yeah, on rook h5, rook h3, he'll probably have bishop f5. White is momentarily up 2 pawns. Black probably has a way to win back at least 1 pawn here, but that means that white still has the advantage. He can put the bishop on e4, start pushing the a pawn. Oh my god, a tactic! Now, king there. There's knight d4, right? Will knight d4 not win the game? I think it will. Tao's tactician taking some time, but it looks like he's got it. Yeah, cat is dog. It looks like the bishop's lost to either knight d4 or rook b8, as people in chat are saying. I guess he doesn't have to resign just yet, but he's not going to win this game. Like, you've got fair drawing chances against the knight here, but you definitely can't win. Oh, black can play rook bb2 here. That's rough. That's a death blow. I was expecting b3 from white on this last move. And now I see why. His king is very, very badly placed to try and draw this. I agree, Fisher. Like, after b3, this is definitely a tough position for white to draw. None of the pawns are advanced. The king's really badly placed. It's definitely a position the knight has fair chances to win. But you also have drawing chances in a practical game. But after this, rook bb2, that's the death blow, and Tao's tactician finds it. Leaving the knight hanging, but it wins 1 more pawn, probably 2 more pawns. So that's going to be GG right there. That is the end of that. And the only national master in the Dojo Championships is out. Done. Kaput. Rook a2, rook b2, knight c5. His mate, even. All with checks. Not a single chance for white to do anything remaining here. c5 is wrong. This would have been checkmate, folks. Check. Here. Check. Here. Check. Here. Oh, he saw a way to win another rook. Sure, that's good enough. It's the same thing as mate at this level. And as you can see, this match took about the same time as a normal weekend tournament does, right? 4 games of 15 plus 5. Strongly contested. Long, tough games. And I think it's fair to say that Tal's Tactician, like, had a very, very strong performance in this match. I mean, game 3 was just absolutely crushing position. Unbelievable that he didn't win that game 3, and just end the match in game 3. It's funny, actually, all 3 games that ended in wins, the wrong player won them in a certain sense. Like, the first game was won by Tal's Tactician, who was dominated in the opening by Evan. Terrible, terrible position, down a pawn with white, coming straight out of the opening, then won the endgame down a pawn. And then game 2, I think, was their draw. Game 3, last game, Tal's Tactician was just completely winning out of the opening. Evan couldn't move, queen trapped on the back rank, and yeah, and that game ended in a win for Evan somehow. And then game 4 here, Evan was winning the whole game, and then he hangs a bishop at the end and he loses it. So all 3 games, the player who should have won lost from a certain kind of perspective. 3 sort of comebacks, I would say. Well, we've got Rinked and Evan here in the chat, so they can share their thoughts with the enraptured crowd that's just been watching. But my feeling was, like, all 3 decisive games, the player who was losing won the game. So, pretty high intensity. I don't know about sealed your fate, Evan. This game here was very winnable despite everything that led to this game. But this king d2 move, I think this was maybe a big mistake here versus bishop e3. Just trying to play f4. I feel like once you play f4, your advantage is pretty unassailable. I would bet on white winning after bishop e3. Unless I'm missing, like, a tactical variation for black right here. Once you play f4, black's essentially lost. So they have to calculate rook e5 here, I think. I calculated that this would win for you. Best way to convert game 3 is a very tough question. Yeah. Switch over to game 3 for a second. Maybe when Evan played queen e8 in the opening, you could go knight b5. That was one idea I had for this position. Although I hadn't reckoned with knight d5 as the defense. It was just like a thought I had. Played knight d4, f4, knight g6. Now you didn't play f5 because of knight e5. Maybe you can just push here. f5, knight e5, what do you care, right? I mean, I know you no longer have him in a bind. He's going to get to play d6 and, like, trade his bishop for a knight on f5 maybe at some point. But if you checkmate him, that's okay. It's still going to be a while before all 3 of these pieces equal yours. I mean, g6 looks suicidal. You probably don't expect that. But on a random move like d6, black can't hide behind the pawn because the rook's trapped, right? So that's also death. Does anybody see like a plausible defense for black to this move? Knight h8. I said plausible, Evan. I said plausible. On queen e5, yeah, maybe going to the endgame down a piece. It's probably minimal drawing chances here. The bishop on g5 was loose. Oh, to do this. Okay. I guess I hung the bishop on g5, but Rinked's position bailed me out anyway. That's a good idea too, Waffle Truck. Yeah, absolutely you can do that. Holy moly, that looks crushing to me, Waffle Truck. Your idea. This, by the way, is totally crushing, right? Black's just been back rank mated. There were no other legal moves in this variation, really, right? Rook f7, queen e8 was also back rank mate. Now you say check very loudly with queen e3. Yeah. Niz kids, by the way. Okay, let's check out Waffle Truck's idea. Waffle Truck says, in this position, just crack the dark squares. This is like a sweet idea. First of all, the knight's on a great square here, right? But like, let's say black plays, I don't know, the most plausible looking move here. You play knight g7 hitting their queen. They can't just let you play knight h5 next, right? So presumably they go here. You go like check here. Something like this. So the thing is, like, this is really, really looking locked in. And black can't seem to bring anything here. I mean, there's probably more than one way to win, Fisher Seb, yes. But white has to be precise and pick one. You guys want to know if the computer likes f5, f6, or knight f5 better? Let's turn on the computer. The computer says Waffle Truck's knight f5 is the best. +3 to just play knight f5, threat of knight g7, and even against f6, the computer is just playing knight g7. And laughing. Just straight up laughing at black's position. Here, check, here, and probably queen h5, and the attack continues. Well, I don't know, Evan. You may have been losing this whole game. The computer also says that f5, knight e5, f6 is a winning advantage for white. This computer's not very good. It changes its mind fairly frequently, but it's playing g6 for black here. And it's giving me an evaluation of 2.7. Not quite Waffle Truck's 3.3, but for a computer this random and not very good, this is almost the same thing. But actually, I think both winning ideas are very instructive, right? Like, to some extent, Waffle Truck and I did the exact same thing here, right? We just bum rush g7. Yeah, a stronger computer than this, like, cloud lobotomized stockfish here would probably just say, like, made in 17 or something. I mean, like, there are much stronger computers out there. You see there's something in common with what we both did, which is we both wanted to attack the black king now, and we both picked the exact same target square, g7. Right? I played f5, f6, sort of demolishing g7 with a pawn sack, and Waffle Truck played knight f5, knight g7, just saying, hey, I've got enough pieces. I'm going to keep my dark squared pawn structure and then just lock black in. Right? And by the way, I mean, the computer might be wrong, but Fisher-Seb saying everything wins. The computer's third choice here is rook d to e1 with a 0.5 advantage. This is a very, very weak computer, so maybe everything wins and the computer's wrong, Fisher-Seb, but maybe there's only two like real like crunching knockouts, and they're both going after g7 in 2 moves. I don't know. That seems instructive to me. Okay, so this position, by the way, Evan, this should already be lost. As far as like was knight g6 the decisive mistake, this position here is lost. I think knight d2 is already losing. Maybe even bishop b4. I don't know. But this position looks dead lost to me. Okay, so here I was thinking maybe this, and we're saying this move for black. Now, let's say white just continues playing this position. Queen c4. Ah, you were trying to play knight b5 anyway. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Got it. Well, what if you just did this? This move is also discouraging black from like trying to break out with f6, right? Which is what the queen and rook both want, is the move f6. You're not really threatening rook d5, no, because c6 hits these. What you're threatening here, ranked, in this variation, what you're threatening is knight c7 or rook e1. I mean, the plan is if black plays a6, then I'm just going to take. I can tell you that that's my plan. Just, you know, taking apart these dark squares even more and tying up their pieces, right? We got the queen in here. Yay. This is tough for black. It may seem like I'm not doing anything too exciting, but I mean, there's games where you spend 60 moves trying to get a penetration like your queen into the opponent's position like this. This is surely winning. Hey, Boondock Striker, have you figured out your match? Is it scheduled? Let me see. Boondock Striker and Benausos. I don't know when it's scheduled. Let me know if you know when it is. So on queen c4, you know, I don't know what the move is for black. Somebody's got to suggest a move. I mean, if c6, then knight d6, right? I don't think you want to play c6 either. All right. I was just doing this because I thought that that's what he was afraid of, Evan. But yes, I see you saying that, and I think it's the same thing. I'll go here instead of here, but I make the same threat to just take the pawn on c7. Knight c6. Well, you can't have it both ways. You just move the knight that could go to c6. Yeah, the queen technically has a square here now, but you still can't play this position as black with the white knight on this square. I mean, it's just, yeah, just can't be done. It's just dead. I'm defending this pawn so I can bring this knight to f5. You can't play any position where I gain control of d6, I don't think. Like this one here, takes this and pray. You can't give me this d6 square. Why are you still making moves? I told you you can't do this. When will you learn to just say, okay, David, I won't do this. I won't give you the d6 square. It is almost like that, cat's a dog. Knight b6. Jesus, he won't give up. Fisher Seb, you think I'm really not going to win? You think I'm not going to win your piece? And that even if I didn't win your piece, that I wouldn't win the game once I'm on d6? I don't even need to take your knight. You can play queen e8 and I'll play rook c1. Look. Keep your knight. Have your knight. You out-tacticked me. I don't see how to capture it. I'll play rook c1. That's how I would make an opponent resign OTB. I would play rook c1 in this position, not taking their knight. And then wink at them. Like, if you want to, you can play rook b8 and knight a8. I'll let you hide away your precious knight. So same goes for knight b4. Someone mentioned knight b4 here. Nope, you can't give me d6. You can't give me d6. I'll be the only one playing the game. That was a good try. Oh, you've got this move. Hang on. I better calculate here because the bishop came out. Oh, no. Black's trying to get into the game, too. Super uncool, Black. Nice spot, Evan. This position's winning for white. Don't worry, Ranked. Don't worry, you're still winning here. That's what I felt, Ranked, yeah. That the dominant player lost each of the 3 games, yeah. Which sort of means you won the match by getting dominated twice out of 3 times or something. Yeah, you can play like this. Unbelievable. It's still a game. White's got an edge, but tough endgame still to play. D5, D5, D5. Oh! How could this even be a position? Oh, and you're just even going to play knight c4, huh? Oh my goodness. D5. Okay. I'm going to try not to allow that. I can't find the right move here either. Yeah, I tried making bishop e7 work, Stamen. That's a good variation for you to point out. In this position here, it's interesting. Bishop e7, queen b5, takes. And with all these moves, I didn't see a way to win this knight. Queen e8, queen e7. And I didn't find anything for white here. I thought of playing rook b1 in this position, but it was like a long calculation. But yeah, that's a tricky line. Maybe I didn't calculate to the end. Here. Whew. Why do we prefer queen c2? Because I was trying to take on c7 with my queen, Wrath of Gods. You can watch Liar, but the yeah, it's too late to join anything. Okay, yeah, sorry. Good night, Ranked. And congrats on the match win. You think Fisher said there may have been a way to win that bishop e7 position or get a major advantage out of it somehow? This Dojo Championship, Liar T, these are already matches that people are playing, and these players already qualified to these matches from a previous big tournament. So, yeah, the Dojo Championship is a series of knockout matches. It's not like a traditional tournament. And they're split into rating sections, and it's already in motion. You know, the qualification phase is over, and on we go here. Okay, I'll play queen c1. Now probably knight a6 or knight d5, right? Because I'm going to play knight c7 otherwise. And then I'll play it anyway. Now I don't have a knight hanging on b5. So, okay, you can play knight 45, Evan. It'll be the same position, right? When I do this, probably, because the queen's trapped. So we go here and here. And now, you probably still have to play d5, but my knight's not hanging. So I'm going to take en passant then. Oh, you're going to play here and let me box you in? Boondock Striker, yes, you're supposed to play a 4-game match with Benausos. And if the match ends in a draw, you're supposed to keep playing. And the first person to win one more game wins the match. And in your match, Benausos should have white in games 1 and 3, and then, you know, 5, 7, etc. if you guys have a long match. The game should be played in one sitting, not like one game today, game 2 tomorrow, but like you guys should sit down and play the match. And when you've got the time, you can send me a message with it. The spreadsheet is locked so that everyone can view it, but nobody can mess with it except for me. So you can just send me a message when you're scheduled up. You're planning to go queen e6 to c4. Yeah. So you want to play something like here, 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 here. Right. Is there a question about whether or not this position's winning? Or do we know that white is winning? Cat is a dog. You feel like you understand it? Rook b8, baby. Okay, so Evan doesn't think that this is losing. He might be planning knight a8. Oh, he even told us knight a8 was coming. He's not hiding it. And he's going to play knight a8 now. That's good, Evan. Being not proud is the key to defending well and saving some games. So, yeah. I suppose Evan has sort of avoided like straight up resigning. Like he's not disputing that White's better, but maybe White's not winning. Or maybe White needs to play really well to win, let's say. Really, really well. That's already an accomplishment for Black. Just for it to be hard for White to win. We could, Wrath of Gods. Yeah, we could. F6. I'm happy to see F6, actually, now that I think about it. I want the king side open before those queen side pieces come out, probably. I was thinking, Evan, that you would play bishop b7 and rook c8 as fast as possible. I thought that's what you were going for. I think here and here, try to trade off a little more material. Because in a sense, White's still going to be able to make threats against your king, right? Like at some point, you're probably bringing out your bishop and sacking your d-pawn, right? At some point, this knight might be on f5. So I think you're kind of looking to trade a rook on c8. Yeah, bishop a7 was an option. Stayman winning a pawn. But, you know, trading a rook. It would have probably eventually left White up a pawn. Just for reference, this is what Stayman's asking about. Like bishop a7, knight takes, bishop takes. I think Evan would have gone here, but whatever. He could do whatever he wants. My thinking about this position is eventually Black's going to play like b5. White's going to go win that pawn while the black bishop gets out. And then White's going to play this opposite colored bishop ending up a pawn. Like clearly White's better, but do they win? We don't know. They would have to play very well. So I tried this, 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 and I think maybe here. Could be what Evan truly wants. And then here. Now rook c8, rook takes is annoying because of the bishop hanging. So maybe now it's rook d8 instead of rook c8. Right? And now, you know, white still has a lot of work to do. Yeah. I mean, I'm very comfortable with the white position, but the game's still going. I play maybe like rook d6, and I'm not going to argue that I've won the game. I'm going to say it's still going. I don't know if it's like king f8 or rook c8. Anyway, there's like hundreds of moves now, but well. The knight is going to come out eventually, yeah, but it's still going to be a little while, Penguin. Still going to be a moment or two. Evan's trying to unscramble them about as fast as he can, which is important because if given time, white has ways to make threats on the king side with knight f5, h5, h6, just like what Waffle Truck and I wanted to do in the middle game. This is the square to go for, this dark square. This game really has characteristics of an opposite colored bishop position throughout. Maybe it was an opposite colored bishop position throughout. Yeah, there was always a bishop on c8 and a dark square bishop for white. Absolutely right. Yeah, no wonder it had dark square bishop feeling to it. You know, if white can ever crack g7, that's really like the key square. Yeah, cat is the dog. For this, I think it's fair to say that white still has to prove things, but that black is definitely worse, right? Black's definitely worse. But it's not yet for sure if they've been pushed over the edge or not. So knight b5 was interesting and playable. I think it was Wrath of Gods wanted to see something with bishop f6 or instead of knight c7. So it's like here, 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 here. He wants to. Okay, so even with this knight on d5, you want to try bishop f6? I mean, one thing I could do here as white is I could also play this building rook e1 move. Oh, but black's going to try d6 then, right? Yeah, people are still trying to defend it, Fisher said. Yeah, bishop f6, definitely you could take it. I don't know if you want to take it with the pawn or the knight first. This is Wrath of God's idea, is to put the bishop here at some point. Oh, I guess you don't want to take with the knight first, probably because of this. That's probably clear enough. So it's like you're taking like this. And then, I don't know how disturbed Wrath of Gods is, but maybe Wrath of Gods is planning that, hoping for this, and then this. It can't be. It must be said he has like an idea. It's not obviously a bad idea. There is a threat of checkmate. Oh, but Evan covers both the queen g7 checkmate and the queen h7 checkmate. The idea was to, you know, if you can't checkmate here, like knight e6 or something, you play here and then knight g5. Queen e4. Yes. Yes. Rook d4. She goes and does her job. Okay, I didn't get Wrath of God's idea correctly. So Wrath of Gods wants to do this. Trade once on c7, then put the bishop here. But with this move order, Wrath of Gods, there's knight here, and black just leaves the pawn here. They don't take you. Oh, then you take them? Or what? Maybe you wait with rook d6, stop them from bringing reinforcements. What was wrong with knight e6 instead of queen e4? Okay, so like here, 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 knight e6. The problem is queen here. Here, knight g5. If you ever take on g5, there's queen g7 mate, and if you don't take on g5, there's queen h7 mate. That's why queen e4 to g6 was a good defense. That's a cool idea, though, Wrath of Gods, that like you could throw something at c7 and g7 at the same time. Right. I had first thought the knight was going through a6, so this changes things a little bit. But Fisher Seb doesn't even necessarily believe that this is going to defend. So rook d4, queen here, knight e5. I don't know. We take everything, right? That's how Evan defended this game eventually, just taking everything, and white couldn't quite crack him. I don't think we need to go this fast for white. This feels too fast. I think in this position here, you can probably play rook e1. Because this makes knight c7 better and bishop f6 better. So, I don't know. It's tough to say what black would do. I think he would probably try d6. Yep, I'm right. He says d6. And then probably like here, here, here. If d5 or something, there's bishop e7 probably. So I don't know. He'll probably take and play queen c6 or something. I'm just trying to guess. Maybe knight e5 stops queen c6. Then there's bishop e6, and then there's bishop e7. Oh, good call, Wrath of Gods. Let's just play bishop e7 and collect this pawn later. Threat is rook to d8. This is a clear advantage for white. I mean, basically a winning endgame for white. Black's going to just have to develop the bishop here somewhere. So the rook stops rook d8. And then white can take here and take here. It's winning, actually. It's winning. And very nice point. Wrath of Gods is going to answer this move with this move. Although after the bishop moves, that might have been... Oh, it'll still be fine. He'll trade, trade, trade. Not like a maniac, but like somebody now systematically winning the game. It's not easy to win that position, but it's technically winning. So... Sorry, Wrath of Gods. It wasn't as fun as you wanted. But anyway, all that makes me think that rook e1 would have been a good move here, perhaps. In the game, knight d4 was played. a6 to stop the knight b5 move. Okay, so that was a big threat, which then didn't happen. Then f4. I mean, I guess nothing wrong with what Tal's Tactician did, right? f4, preparing f5, f6. And on knight g6, knight f5 was winning to go here, and f5, f6 was winning. So Evan's thinking that did he have to play d6 in this position with the idea of pawn takes and then coming here? I mean, I suppose so, but this is lost. Bishop e7 is one winning move. So I don't think this move necessarily like defends. Hello, Soren from Denmark. Knight d5, not to g6. So something similar happens. Knight takes knight. If you trade queens, then the knight on d5 gets defended. Knight here. Bishop e7. And white wins this. So. Man. He still's got some shots in the quiver. Knight c3 here. I realized you were threatening that when I had a knight here, but I forgot you could still do it. Yeah, you might escape now. I blundered that move for sure. Okay, so knight d5 is a pretty good move. I'm going to need a very good move myself here, right? That's probably not the really good move I'm looking for. Man, oh man. Okay, so you're right to try d6. You're right to try d6, and it's not that easy. Wow. Knight d5. You still have a chance. Yeah, this was a bad opening, this one. The other three were a lot better. All right, folks, it's like far past time for me to get off and do some other things, unfortunately. So thanks for the riveting match, Evan. And, of course, to Ranked, who's already gone. That was exciting. And there'll be more of this Dojo Championship. I think this is going to be a really special event throughout the rest of the year. So, see you all. Take care. Be well. And if anyone sees something worth rating out there, looks like they voted you in for commentary. Looks like Lily just stopped her stream. Sure, you can commentate, Evan, for sure. You'll commentate better than this opening on this one game. Sure, fair enough. All right, folks, you may have to find your own channel. I don't know where to go. Catherine Brevold is playing Bullet. That's not me. That's not me. Lily stopped her stream, Evan. All right. You guys will have to give me feedback later on this channel here. Bye, everybody.